lyrics, that's our talk. So we could basically just go home singing that song and we kind of would get it, right, you know? This idea of unconditional love. I see Jen Bates back there crying. She's got another brand new beautiful little chocolate lab after her precious dog died recently. And so we've all had those beings in our lives, in the four-legged beings, you know, and two-legged beings also that have inspired us and helped us see ways to live this unconditional way in the world. Thank you for those beautiful lyrics. And so that's what we're talking about today, walking the edge. Finding the power, that place within us that knows who we really are, that essential essence. Finding the power, the perseverance, the basic trust in the universe, and the peace, the harmony, that what Glenda mentioned, the peace that passeth all understanding. Finding those three qualities to help sustain us through our normal human walk in the world, the human condition. Because really, no matter where you look today, things seem a little bit collectively complex, and certainly in our own individual lives things are very confusing sometimes. We've got lots and lots going on. So this idea of stepping into these ways of being in the world so that we can actually show up living fearlessly within the complexities of our lives, that's huge. And so on Friday night, as is my custom on Friday nights, I had dinner with a group of lady friends, and one of the lady friends gave me this book as for my birthday. You must have known what the topic would be today. Peace be with you, the name of the book. And as I opened it up, the first little reading that I opened to was this reading, and I thought, absolutely perfect for this talk. Finding this place of peace does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, where there is no trouble, and there is no hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This idea of being able to walk on the edge, this chaotic edge of life, and remain peaceful and calm and in harmony with our experience. To find that sense of peace, no matter what comes along, no matter what comes at us. Most of it's coming with no permission. Isn't that the truth? It comes uninvited. It just sort of shows up and we have to be in a position to respond to it. So that's what we're talking about. And the thing is, most of us are a little impatient around that idea that things come up uninvited and surprising us, because we like things to be very predictable, very permanent, very stable, very reliable, right? We like to design our life the way we want it, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And when stuff shows up that doesn't support our idea of what we want our life to look like or our circumstances to look like, all of a sudden we find it very difficult. And so this idea of being able to be with that, even though we may feel like we're walking on the edge of chaos in the process, what our author calls the zone of the unknown, when we're walking that edge of chaos, we can still know the truth about our experience, especially when we're tapping into those three essential qualities of power, perseverance, and peace. We can still know that wherever we are, no matter what's going on, whether we love it or whether we don't, whatever's going on, the truth of the matter is we are always standing right in the middle of sacred space. Yes, because wherever we are, God is. Yes. So if we really believe what we teach, no matter what's going on, that is the sacred space, the holy ground, you see. This edge of chaos that's uncertain and maybe painful is the place where we birth the possibilities and the newness and something new out of whatever's going on. This is it. But if we're totally drawn off center and we're polarized and we're identifying and attached with the extremes of our experience, we're going to miss the possibility of finding that newness and that creative moment within our experience, because we're going to be too off-center. So our work is to continue, I like this phrase, to continue to make friends with all of it. over and over, again and again, no matter how it shows up. Because usually whatever's showing up, whether we like it or we don't like it, it usually in one way or another is supporting a story that we've created around it, either from the past or from the present. We've created this story, we're holding an opinion, we've got a judgment about it, we've maybe got some history with it, and what happens is we start having an opinion about all of the way things are showing up, and it gets concretized, it becomes a habit, and then everything that we see starts getting colored by that filter. And usually, especially when it's about pain and uncertainty and stuff that's not fitting our idea of what we want our box to look like, usually we are not wearing rose-colored glasses. We're usually wearing some sort of icky shade of mustard yellow ick, right? And so everything we look at has this shade of, I don't like it. I don't like the way that's showing up. That's bad. That's icky, whatever. So our work is to have a fresh look at what's going on, to leave the old patterns behind, to leave the extremes, the polarities behind, and not attach to these extreme positions. Not attached to that. Because we have a tendency to compartmentalize everything that happens in our lives as good and bad, beautiful and ugly, right? Don't we? Right and wrong. Of course, you know, we always like to make ourselves right and everybody else wrong. That's a biggie. And when we look at the way the news out pictures and we look at some of our relationships with folks, don't we see that there's a lot of emphasis on these agendas about I'm right and you're wrong? Yes, yes, we see that. Because we have this unconscious compulsion to label everything, to compartmentalize it, to put it in a box, to judge it in one way or another. And I like what our authors tell us. This is the good news. Believe it or not, our opinions, our judgments, our labeling is not always necessary. It's not always necessary, and guess what? It's not always beneficial. It's not always beneficial in our own journey, and it's not always beneficial in the greater whole. Because the truth of the matter is, when something is going on in our life experience, it just is what it is. I like what Wayne Dyer says about that. It's this and it's that. Allow it to be. And it doesn't really matter what opinion I have about it. It's going to be what it is. So our work is to embrace this. Embrace the both and aspect of our life experience. It's always going to be all of it. And we're at choice. We can either choose to identify with the extremes and get all wound up and all involved and all worried and all fearful over things or that we don't like or that aren't going our way, or we can get all attached and all wound up and all wrapped up in the stuff that we do like, and then we collapse and get paralyzed when it shifts and changes, and it, you know, because everything changes, right? So either way, whether it's fabulous or it's not, if we're totally identified with either end of the polarity, we're going to suffer. So the idea is to come to the middle so that we find the gap in between those two polarities, so that that's the image of the yin-yang, so that we can stay in that middle ground. That it's not about being wishy-washy, it's about finding that perfect harmonizing place between that neutral place, that unbiased place, that place that doesn't have to have a one-sided perspective, that is big enough and has a gap large enough to allow God to be God within the experience, so that there are not these extremes, you see. So we're in a moderate position, the moderate position. And when we are in a moderate position, I want to tell you something. It benefits everybody. It safeguards the vital interests of the whole when we're not spinning off into the polarities of the extremes. It's the image of the middle path that the Buddhists talk about, this idea that there's always light and dark. There's always that. It will always be that. And if we label it as good and bad, or icky and not icky, whatever we do, if we label that and we fail to see that they are equal parts of a whole, and within, see the image of the symbol? Within the symbol, within all of our experiences, there is an element of the other within it. There's space for, there's a gap where the opposite is present too. So our work is to find that harmonizing place between, so that we can dance, like our author said in the beginning. We can dance with our experiences, that place of harmony. One of the authors talks about this idea that when we're all wound up in our either extreme, he says we're like a lute string. We can't play ourselves well. A lute string, you know, a lute like the guitar that type thing that Freebo's playing. A lute string must be tuned neither too tight nor too loose to produce a harmonious sound. If we're wound up too tight or we're too loose, we're not going to be in harmony with things, you see. So this idea, remember Goldilocks? Remember Goldilocks' search? She found the porridge and it was too hot and too cold. What was she looking for? Just right. Then she found the hard chair or the big chair and the little chair, and she was looking for just right. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for that place in us that can identify just right. It's just right. So as I close my part of the talk, I want to share a story about a person in our community who is you'll relate to this, Marianne, who is a foundational covenant fellowship member. And today I know that she is in the comfort of her bed waiting more chemotherapy. And she has told us that she watches our Sunday talks every day or every week from the comfort of her bed. Now the reason that this is happening for her is because several years ago she had an extremely difficult diagnosis, very life-threatening terminal sort of cancerous situation. And over the years, they told her that her prognosis was very, very poor, that she didn't have long to walk on the earth. And in the process, she was able to move into this place of unconditional acceptance of this experience, so that she did what she needed to do. She didn't go to the extremes either direction. She didn't go into denial. She didn't spin off into, you know, some sort of total, absolute, abject fear, but she found this middle place that allowed her to be with this difficult diagnosis and still step into full tilt living, still embrace life on life's terms. She has far outlived her expectations. And she's done it with vigor, and she's traveled, and she's seen her grandchildren go through phases of their lives, and she found that gap where she could hold sickness and health at the same time. And when she found that so that she could walk that edge, that border. And this is what I want to share. When we can do that, we find that one, that being. We become that being in our life experience that then becomes a beneficial presence for the greater whole. And so a person, can I use your name? So Marianne several years ago, and Phyllis is a dear friend of Phyllis, the person with this illness. Oh, Phyllis, I'm sorry. She won't mind because she's very open about her situation. Marianne spent quite a bit of time with Phyllis, and she was experiencing the death of her brother. And she went to Phyllis for comfort, and Phyllis did comfort her. And in the process, Marianne said to her, "It's so terrible that my brother has to die. It is so terrible that my brother has to die." And in walking her own edge of chaos, in finding that middle path in her own difficult experience, her counsel and her comfort and her comment to Marianne was, why does it have to be terrible? This is her experience. She's found that place where she can say, why does it have to be terrible? Why does it have to be terrible? It is what it is, no matter what. And our work is to make a choice to find the peace that passes all understanding within the experience, no matter what comes along, no matter what. And I know that shifted your experience, Marianne. Yes. This power, this perseverance, this peace. So here's your invitation. Where are you being called to walk the edge of chaos in your own life right now? To enter that maybe scary zone of the unknown. What does that look like for you? And as you're doing that, can you actually open yourself big enough to allow the gap so that you can embrace the idea and live the truth that no matter what's going on, where you are, that you are standing in the middle of sacred space. You are on holy ground, no matter what it is. Can you open yourself to that? Fearless living, right in the middle of all of the chaos.